So if anyone has a question, please feel free to step up to the mic and ask our guests.
So obviously some characters get more speaking time in the cartoons than others. So everybody knows like Wheeljack and Hound will get more speaking time than Blue Streak or Sunstreaker. Was this your choice? Did you just read descriptions of the characters and say, this character really fits for the plot I'm going for? Or were you told by someone higher up, we really want you to puff this character?
Well, I guess I was most at the effect of that, so I'll answer that. Sorry, I've been talking too much. But the short answer is we could use they would send us faxes, right? There was no internet, really. As a matter of fact, the internet's kind of began with Steve Gerber. But, they would send us faxes, and the faxes would say things like, we're discontinuing dipstick and ashtray, and please insert, hubcap and wiper, and we do that. But no, I mean we sort of knew to use the core team, but no, we could use any characters we wanted, which is one of the delightful things is that minor characters would entirely, Power Glide and Sea Spray getting entire, episodes.
Yeah, and I'll just add that there were so many characters at any given one time. For me anyway, I would just go down the list and just the characters I found more appealing that I thought I would have more fun writing for, I would make secondary characters.
In my experience, the first Transformers I ever wrote, I said, well, we got a lot of characters here. What characters would you like to see in this episode? And he said, I'd like to see them all. And so I worked in my first Transformers script, every single character that was in the Bible, and I had each one use their specialty, whatever their specialty weapon was or whatever personality trait. I worked into it. There were some episodes where they said, we're pushing the term that Bryce used to use, pushing product. This is the character we're pushing this week or this episode, and sometimes they didn't quite fit the story, but I had to work them in. I remember I did one G.I. Joe show. That's the only one I did, and it was they wanted me to emphasize this character who was a skier or something. I can't remember what it was, but a snow skier. And the story,
snowplow.
And the story took place on a desert, and I had to figure out some way of shoehorning him into that story. So that's how it was with me, anyway.
On Joe, I once got a note from Hasbro saying, "Be sure to mention the G.I. Joe sandbags because we're selling those as accessories." And I went, "It's a military base. You're tripping over the damn things."
And let me also add that in my very first Transformers script, when it was still being done by Marvel, and I had already said I didn't really get the show, the plot I came up with involved a bounty hunter. So I went through the list of all the characters and I'm looking at their descriptions, and I couldn't find one. And so nobody told me I couldn't make up my own Transformers, so I did. And that became Devcon, and then, thank you. So, and I didn't realize that he had become a bit of a fan favorite. And at my first Transformer convention, or at least full one, last summer in Toronto, the night I arrived, I find out that Hasbro has finally, after 40 years, acknowledged his existence and came out with an action figure. And people would come up to me and say, well, why was he only in one episode? And I take responsibility for it. It never occurred to me, once I was working on the show, and I like Flint, I was also a producer on Transformers, it just never occurred to me to bring him back. I just thought of him as kind of a one-shot character. So, looking back, I kind of regret it. But also, going back to what Flint said, I too, when I was producer on a show, would get these faxes from Hasbro of new toys they wanted to introduce. And so I ended up writing Starscream's Brigade and creating the origin story for the Combaticons and Bruticus, because they were introducing, I think, all the combiners at that time, or at least
Yep.
the first 4 or 5.
Well, you Devastator and, yeah.
Yeah, I made up one original character, or as they say in, current parlance, created. I made up one original character for an episode called Autobot Spike. And it was a Frankenstein type of story. And this is one of the great lessons I learned in life. Don't create original characters for franchises that you don't own. Because they made a toy out of that. And they're making all kinds of money off the toy, but I'm not seeing a penny off of it. So that's one thing I do now. One of my rules, when I go into a show or a comic book series or something, I'll say, I will only create a new character if I get a piece of the action. Otherwise, I'll write your story. I'll write stories with your characters, but I'm not going to come up with any of my own. I learned that too many times the hard way over the years.
Hi. This is a question for Donald F. Glut in particular. In 1969, you made the first ever Spider-Man fan film, and recently it really blew up online, and everyone's kind of wondering, who is this Donald F. Glut guy? Like, what's the story behind it? So,
I mean, they came kind of distorted.
He's asking you about the first Spider-Man fan film that you did.
Oh, well, in those days we called them amateur movies, and before that we called them home movies. And somewhere in between they became underground films and student films. But that was, my hobby years ago.
When did avant-garde come? Yeah.
One of my old hobbies was making amateur movies. And the last one I did was Spider-Man, and I guess it's online now. You can get all my old amateur movies on a DVD set called I Was a Teenage Movie Maker. And there's commentary tracks on each one. Can you believe that? 12 hours worth of stuff. You can get it online. But anyway, the Spider-Man film was on there. The only thing that's different than the original 16mm film that I made was the music. Because the music had copyrighted music. I took music from an old Chicago album. They had an instrumental interlude, and which worked perfect for the movie, for that film. And I didn't want to get in any kind of a rights problem or get sued or pay heavy royalties. So I had a friend who was a music composer do some original music that we put in there, and which I did get clearance on.
What was it, Freeform? What did you use from Chicago for it?
What?
What was the instrumental from Chicago that you used? Sorry, try a fan question.
I can't remember. I was never a Chicago fan. I happened to be at Mike Nesmith's house once, and he had the album playing, and I listened to it right around the time I made the Spider-Man movie. I said, Mike, that would go great with my Spider-Man movie. Can I borrow the album? I'll be real careful with it. So he let me take the album home, and I dubbed that part of it off. But it was a long instrumental part, and it worked perfectly with the car chase and everything. So I couldn't tell you the name of even one of their songs. I don't know. I didn't like all the horns. I said, horns shouldn't be in rock and roll. You need guitars and pianos and things. But anyway.
I was actually from Chicago, and they played at my high school turnabout dance my freshman year, claiming they had an album cover. They were called Chicago Transit Authority.
Yeah, they got sued by the company that owned the buses and the old trains and the subways. So they had to change their name. That's the way Chicago is.
Yeah, some of the best PR that city ever had, too.
Hi, guys. My question was, do any of you have a favorite line of dialogue that you wrote for G1?
I'm sorry. I don't know if it's my hearing or it's a...
Do you have a favorite line of dialogue that you wrote? Do you have a favorite line of dialogue that you wrote for G1?
A favorite line of dialogue? From one of my scripts or what?
Yeah.
Just that any of you guys wrote in any episode. Did you have a favorite line that you had a character say, or anything that you thought, damn, I really did a good job with that?
I can't think of any favorite line. I have a lot of favorite lines from other people's movies, though. Like, now will you give me my chalk? It's from House of Frankenstein. It begins for me on this road, the wild one. And take them to Missouri, Matt. Red River. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I can remember any of the lines that I wrote.
Well, you wrote the song for Cold Slither or something.
Well, that's true. But that was G.I. Joe, so.
You have to understand, for pretty much everybody here, G.I. Joe and Transformers are kind of a shared world. And we didn't really see a big line between them. I mean, Hasbro did, but we didn't, just so you know.
You know, I think one of my favorite lines of all time in a movie is, you know, how many will recognize this? Fluently. Why, you speak treason fluently. Remember that? Robin Hood? Adventures of Robin Hood?
Was that Robin Hood?
Yeah.
How do you know that? Is Howard Hawks, you mean the original Errol Flynn one? Yeah, wow.
Perfect movie.
Howdy. I've noticed as of late, some of that dialogue's very funny to me now as a more or less adult. Were any of y'all encouraged more or less to make it, you know, kind of funny to adults, to make it, get your mom on board, whatever, with Transformers so she'd let you buy them? Was it intended to be funny for, you know, adults, teenagers? Was that a thing?
I think we wrote for our own satisfaction.
Yeah, no, it was funny for us, you know. I mean, obviously there was certain, you know, rude humor that like Buzz and Michael would participate in that, you know, we couldn't allow, but you had to keep some of that slipped into Visionaries, oddly enough. But we were kind of, I think we all wrote just like stuff that like some part of us was like. I mean, there was no condescension of we're writing for kids, like zero.
Right.
You know, I mean, we realized we're writing, you know, there's certain things you can't talk about and say and do. And I would try to keep in line. But, you know, it was, no, we just wrote for ourselves. And I think everybody did. And I think that's the only way you can write.
Fascinating.
And
Thank you.
You know, personally, I was a big fan, as I said, the Japanese monster movies, Godzilla and those things. And so when I got to write the Dinobot episodes, and I had the fights between the different characters, I just tried to remember what I saw, like in Destroy All Monsters in some of these movies, and try to recreate those. And the animation wasn't up to snuff to really capture the feel, I think, of those Toho films. But that's what went through my mind. I'm getting to write a Godzilla movie now. It's just the names have changed and the look of the characters have changed. Well, but that was fun for me.
Yeah, the thing you guys got to know is, you know, I mean, because I was always, I mean, unlike everybody else in this equation, I was utterly unaware of, you know, most of comic book stuff. And I knew what you'd know as, you know, a person growing up in the era. But, you know, I was always wondering, you know, Dinobots, because I sort of never got them. You know, it's like, why are they look weird in this? And then there's this one guy that always writes them. Then Don has a party. And we go to Don's house, and there are, what, 3,000 dinosaurs in the
museum.
No, I mean, I'm not making this isn't some, joke number, like 3,000, right?
Yeah, you can check it out on www.donglutsdinosaurs.com. But it's the largest website, our hosting company, whatever you call it, said it's the largest website they have ever seen. There's something like 6,000 pages on it. It'll take you like a couple weeks to go through it, if you go through all the sublinks and everything.
It's well worth the journey.
Yeah, Don has written textbooks on dinosaurs. I mean, he knows his business.
I do anything to avoid getting a job. That's what I do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.